It is no exaggeration at all to say that treating the Boston bombing victims has been a matter of life or death for dozens of doctors, nurses, and other medical workers here in Boston. Dr. Vivek Shah was actually running in the Boston Marathon yesterday. He finished the race immediately before those bombs went off. And what did he do immediately after that? He looked to see if the people around him were okay. He joins me right now here, not more than 2 blocks away from where these bombings all happened. And Dr. Shah, just tell me what that was like yesterday.
I think initially myself and all the other runners weren't sure whether it was a firework that had gone bad or something that was supposed to happen. And then after the second explosion went off, we knew something was wrong because all the spectators and fans started running away from us. We were just about to finish. And so my whole family was on that side where the explosion had gone off, so I started running towards where the bombs had gone off to check on my family and to see if there was anything I could do to help.
I think it's an important thing to point out there. The Boston Marathon, it's a family event. It's a family day. Marathon Monday, Patriots Day. So many families come together to watch. So many kids there to support their parents. Tragically, as we know, so many of the victims in this case, the wounded, are children. We know one young boy, an 8-year-old boy, was killed. So you went to check on your family to make sure they were okay right away. You also looked at all the people wounded around you. What was that like?
I mean, it's nothing that you can ever describe. In all of my medical training, I've never seen anything like the amount of trauma that I saw yesterday on the sidewalks there. So
You heard the president a short while ago not talk about just the bad, but also the good. You say you've never seen that much trauma, but I imagine you've also never seen that much support. Doctor after doctor, nurse after nurse, so many people there on the ground to help immediately.
Absolutely. I thought that I would be one of the first people there because I was 25 yards away, from the finish line when the bombs went off. And by the time I got there, there were so many first responders and volunteer physicians. I've never seen anything like that in terms of the quickness of the response to that tragedy.
I have to believe there's no question that saved countless lives. We're joined now also by Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who's standing by at Brigham and Women's Hospital. Sanjay is an expert on trauma care. He's an expert on so much. Sanjay, thank you so much for being with us right now. We talk about the tragedy here, but there was also a great deal of luck at play. These explosions happened within eyesight of a medical tent where there were so many medical personnel around to help.
No question. I can tell you, sort of picking up the story there, we're outside one of the largest level 1 trauma centers here. There were 9 different hospitals where patients were taken to. But just to give you an idea, John, to what you're saying, within 15 minutes after the explosions, the patients started arriving here. So it was pretty quickly. And I just talked to some of the doctors inside. They said within 60 minutes, that proverbial golden hour, all the patients that were going to come here arrived here. There were 31 patients. 15 of them got admitted here, John, 9 of them requiring surgery. There are hundreds of people on the surgical staff here. I spent a lot of time in this hospital, and they have 42 operating rooms. They immediately cleared 7 operating rooms, got those operating rooms open and started taking care of these patients. So that all happened very quickly. They also confirmed, I think, John, you may know this by now, that in these types of injuries, you often see a lot of debris, shrapnel-type wounds. But they did confirm now that the type of shrapnel they saw could not have just been debris lying around, but rather they were, in fact, carpenter nails and BB-like objects, as they were described, they found. And the doctors are confident now that those were actually within the devices and those were intended to be part of the injury that was sort of seen here. Also, at Children's Hospital, as you may know, John, there were 10 patients taken there, Boston Children's. 2 of them were adults, 8 children. 3 remain in the hospital now, John, 2 of them in critical condition. But many of the patients are being discharged, so there's a little bit of good news there, John.
All right, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, Dr. Vivek Shah, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, for your service yesterday, looking after those people who were hurt at the conclusion of that race. Thank you, appreciate it. There is so much information coming in right now here on the investigation, on the recovery. We will give you the newest highlights when we come back. Welcome back to Boston, everyone, and CNN's live coverage in the aftermath of the bombings at the Boston Marathon. One of the hallmarks of this great city, it's a sports town. obsession with the sport teams here. And the Boston Marathon is one of the key events, one of the highlights of the sports year here. And we are getting a look just now at the new cover from Sports Illustrated that will hit the newsstands today. I want you to take a look at this. It's simply one word. It says Boston in photos and words. Boston, with a picture of someone on the ground there. This is the older man, I believe 78 years old, who was knocked down by the explosion. He got up, he finished that race. I think that's important, an important message of perseverance and resilience here with that city, this city, on the cover of Sports Illustrated today. It really is a remarkable picture right there. Moments ago, President Obama spoke out on the bombings, calling the attacks heinous and cowardly. He also, for the very first time, used the word terror. He said the FBI is investigating them as an act of terror, and he vowed that all resources are being used to hunt down those responsible. Joining us now to talk about this, terrorism analyst Karen Greenberg. She's the director of the Center on National Security at Fordham University. Also with us is CNN analyst and former FBI Assistant Director Tom Fuentes. Tom, let me start with you in this bit of new information that's been coming in over the last several minutes from doctors at the various hospitals here who say as they are treating patients, they are seeing signs of metal devices that were put in these bombs, they say. They say they're seeing carpenter nails. They're seeing things, pieces of metal that may be bigger than BBs right now. What does that mean in terms of the investigation? What does that tell us about the potential bomber here? Does that point you towards domestic or foreign? Does it point you towards an organization or perhaps just as what the president called a malevolent individual?
Well, John, first of all, what I'd like to say is that, and this is, basically all of the talking heads that discuss this incident and incidents like it, if your experience and your expertise is Middle East terrorism, it has the hallmarks of Al-Qaeda or a Middle East group. If your experience is domestic groups and the bombings that have occurred here, it has the hallmarks of a domestic terrorist like Eric Rudolph in the 1996 Atlanta Summer Olympics bombing. So I've been to both. I've run bomb scenes in Iraq and also in the U.S., and it has the hallmarks of both, domestic and international, and you could see either side of that. Secondly, the roofing nails is a significant, or I should say the carpenter nails as they've been described by the doctor, is significant. In the Atlanta bombing in 1996, roofing nails were put in a plastic food container which was put next to the bomb, the pipe bomb, in a knapsack. When it exploded, those roofing nails went out, and the one woman that was killed by the bomb itself was hit with a roofing nail, and it killed her. The other fatality was a journalist who had a heart attack running to the scene. But the woman was killed by a roofing nail. The FBI was able to track those nails to where they were manufactured. And what was significant was that there was a defect at the plant so that it made a certain run of nails unique, which were trackable to where they were sold. And again, that provided additional evidentiary and lead value in the investigation. So the embedded shrapnel embedded in the bomb itself that has been removed by the doctors from the victims could be very significant in helping track down where the components were obtained to put those bombs together.
I want to talk a little bit about the calendar here. It was just a few years ago I was actually in Boston covering the Boston Marathon when the Virginia Tech shootings happened. Oklahoma City, the bombings there happened in April, roughly around this date, April 19th. Waco, April 19th. Columbine, April 20th. We're in this zone in April when these attacks seem to happen. Karen Greenberg, is this something that you believe investigators will be looking at?
I think they'll look at everything. I think they'll look at patterns that may have to do with chronology. They'll look at patterns that have to do with the type of device used. They'll look at patterns in terms of locations and choice of locations. And so not one thing is going to be dispositive or not. Everything will be put into sort of the mix, and they'll talk about it. I think what's really interesting about this, and that you have to notice, and it's something that Tom talked about, is the nature of the resilience of how the professionals are responding to this. We know President Obama as a no-drama Obama president. I think what's very interesting is how the severity of this and the tragedy of this have not gone unexamined, but there isn't the concomitant hysteria that we might have worried about. And I think one one thing you have to say, I mean, we know about the carpenter nails, for example, now, that law enforcement and public officials have been keeping the public informed since this incident happened. And so they may not tell us every detail of what chronological picture they're putting together of whether they think this is a domestic event, an international event, an event that combines both domestic and international, whether it's an individual, whether it's somebody in a network, because they are looking at everything. And eventually they will put the pieces together. It's going to take time, but they're keeping us informed, and I think that's a very important part of the dialogue that we're having now.
Karen Greenberg, Tom Fuentes, our thanks to both of you. The response, no doubt, helps with the recovery and the investigation. That's what we're doing right now at this minute. Thanks so much for watching. Our special coverage of the bombings here in Boston continues right after this break.